Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today to bereave the loss of something dear to us. We are here today to say goodbye to a special friend, to say goodbye to an idea. Some might say that to be here gathered today to mourn the loss of a car would be going too far.
In 1996, electric cars began to appear on roads all over California. They were quiet and fast, produced no exhaust, and ran without gasoline. 10 years later, these futuristic cars were almost entirely gone. What happened? Why should we be haunted by the ghost of the electric car? This wasn't the first time the electric car was killed. 100 years ago, there were more electrics on the road than there were gas cars. For many people, electric cars were the car of choice. They were quiet and smooth and could be charged at home. Gas cars, by comparison, required cranking and produced exhaust.
Well, the reason I am here, I'm so old I remember electric cars when they were around in the beginning. I would have been about 6 years old on the way to the symphony in that darling little electric car. They were very quiet, and it had beveled glass windows. It was almost like sitting inside of a huge lamp. What happened? Why did the gas car win over the electric car?
As the 20th century gathered speed, the electric car lost momentum. Automatic starters, cheaper oil, and mass production gave the edge to the gasoline car. By 1920, the internal combustion engine had won the race for control of the roads, and the modern automobile age was born. Of the hundreds of millions of cars built in the 20th century, almost none were electric. They were sleek, they were fast, and they gave Americans the open road. But as time went on, their number one flaw became more apparent: smog.
California has the worst air quality in the nation, and it impacts some of our largest population centers.
In my district, we have what is called the black cloud of death that hangs over the port areas and the areas surrounding the ports. We are seeing some tremendously debilitating effects: asthma rates, cancer rates, lung development in children, children not being allowed to play outside.
In 1989, a study found that 1 out of 4 15 to 25-year-olds in Los Angeles County had severe lung lesions and chronic respiratory disease. In 1990, there were 41 Stage 1 smog alerts. No matter what kind of car we drive, every gallon of gas we burn adds 19 pounds of carbon dioxide to the air. The more gas we burn, the more CO2 we create.
If you don't do something with that CO2, if you don't sequester it, then it's going to be going up into the atmosphere, and CO2 is a global warming gas.
I believe the problems of global warming will be far greater than the problems of Social Security or even the problems of war on terrorism.
We got the equivalent of a nuclear time bomb on our hand with global warming. If lung disease from air pollution is unimportant, if all those things don't count, we're going to be in bad trouble.
And there's a public health crisis that we have to have incentives and we have to have alternatives.
Car companies experimented with alternatives over the years, but none of them ever seemed to make it out of the proving grounds.
I remember I was the chairman of the board of the Tennessee Valley Authority, and we were promoting the electric car back in the late 70s. I had even planned a race from Gatlinburg, Tennessee to Nashville between Paul Newman and Robert Redford, and I had it all lined up, and then I realized that we'd get a lot of national publicity, but there were no cars in the showrooms.
It would take a different kind of race to make the electric car the car of the future.
The Sun Racer was a solar-powered vehicle that was developed here at AeroVironment for the purpose of winning a race.
In 1987, GM won the World Solar Challenge race in Australia with a one-of-a-kind solar-powered electric vehicle, the Sun Racer. Emboldened by their success, GM CEO Roger Smith challenged the same design team to build a prototype for a practical electric car.
If we were to go full speed ahead with electric cars, the electronics had to be good enough in order to warrant that concept. And that's where the work of Alan Caccone came in.
Now, you built the prototype for this in your garage?
Yeah, so my garage isn't quite the average garage. It's actually a pretty good machine shop and electronics lab, but yes, I built it there. It's like a 3-channel stereo amplifier that provides the right size sine waves and right frequency to drive the motor for all the different driving conditions. So it is a 100,000-watt stereo amplifier.
Alan's breakthrough power system helped create an electric car unlike any that had ever been driven before.
So they had kept this car also a secret, much better than any other Detroit secret, because it was all developed out here in California. So it truly was a surprise when it was introduced to the Los Angeles Auto Show.
This is going to represent a great step forward for people in terms of commuting to work, from work, if you don't have to go more than 120 miles a day.
Other than the jokes that we made about the wisdom of calling a vehicle the Impact, it was very impressive. It was a very high tech, and it had an interesting premise that we've got this sort of Corvette electric type car, 2-seater, slick styling and all that, and that we can make a business out of it.
Well, it's interesting. I had worked with the program manager who then called me and said, would you like to be on the electric vehicle program? And I said, that's fine. What do you want me to do? And he said, very simply, develop demand for electric vehicles worldwide. And I said, do you have any instructions? And he took a blank piece of paper and shoved it in front of me, and he said, no instructions, you go figure it out. And so at that point, I joined the program.
It got a lot of interest flowing in the industry. But it did something else. It caught the attention of the California Air Resources Board.
California's Air Resources Board, or CARB as it was known, saw the electric car as an opportunity to solve another problem.
Since GM had already announced that they were going to produce an electric vehicle before we even adopted the mandate, the electric vehicle technology became sort of the technology of greatest promise.
Knowing a modern electric car was now possible, California regulators took a bold and unprecedented step. They passed the Zero Emissions Vehicle Mandate. The mandate was simple. If automakers wanted to continue to sell cars in California, some of those cars would have to be vehicles with no exhaust.
They decided we're going to ramp it up. We're going to say 2% in '98, we're going to say 5% in 2001, and 10% in 2003.
For the car companies, there were only two options: comply with the law or fight it. In the end, they would do both.
Is here.
The EV1 from General Motors.
The Impact prototype became the EV1, the first modern electric production car from a major U.S. car company in nearly a century. GM chose its Saturn division to market it in California and Arizona.
I bought my first Saturn at 17, and they said, do you want to come work here? And so I thought, okay, it'd be a good college job. I'll put myself through college this way. And Turned out I loved the cars more than I loved what I was studying in college, and 3 years later they announced the EV1 program and I jumped on it. There were the 13 of us, most of whom were mid-20s, unattached, single, no kids, willing to do anything for little money. We all handled a particular geographic region. Mine started as LA, and I worked with everybody from engineers and students to celebrities.
I have a picture of myself just hearing this Saturn song and just being so happy.
I had one of those early EV ones, and I used it here in the Capitol. I loved the car.
It's sort of like everything Americans want in a car. They're cool, they're fast, they're sexy. I mean, I got in the car and I felt like, ooh.
It was fairly reasonably priced. It was between $250 and $500 a month.
I haven't tried accelerating too much because there's too many cops around. I'm afraid I'll get a ticket. I'll be too excited.
Believe it or not, that sucker goes. That thing will take you down the PCH so fast you could get a ticket.
I did kind of feel like Batman, you know, that sort of like, and the way it takes off out of the cave. You know, I have this gate that opens and it goes.
You get inside and the console is really near you and the lighting is beautiful.
It was quiet.
The car was so fast, it looked like it would outrun its own shadow.
Oh, it's an awesome car to drive.
It was the crest of a wave that we thought was coming in. It was the new thing that was going to, you know, change the way everybody travels.
Other car companies began to comply, often with conversions of gas cars, but with many of the same advantages of the EV1.
I'm not mechanical at all, and I love dealing with my electric car because it's so easy. I plug it in at night, and when I need to drive it, I unplug, drive it away.
They're for people who love the environment.
I said they're just for people who love cars. They're for people who have to go somewhere.
Well, this is amazing. What you do is with this electric car, Dave, you put the key in and you turn it. Wow. And then there's this thing on the floor called the pedal. A pedal.
The exciting thing about this is the cost of operating the car is the same as if you were driving a typical gasoline car, but the gasoline only costs 60 cents a gallon.
Going to the gas station is a hassle, believe it or not. Plugging a car in is not.
The battery that you charge at home, it gets about between 70 and 80 miles per charge, which for me is more than all the driving that I need to do in the course of a day.
People started seeing the cars on the road and getting a better understanding of what they could do. Friends and neighbors and relatives started saying, hey, that's a neat idea, you know, I should get one of those. And we started seeing the momentum building for this and the waiting lists being created for these cars.
Cut to,
I go online to look for other Toyota RAV4s, and I see Toyota RAV4 EV. And I said, what's that? Click. Wow, my whole world opened up. It's this electric vehicle. It goes, you know, 100 miles to a charge, blah, 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 blah. It's just like, I didn't know this existed. I didn't know this was a possibility. How come I don't know about this? Have you seen this on TV?
When I first tried to buy the Honda EV Plus, I drove in it and I said, hey, this is a great car. I said, I'll take it. The person who was trying to sell it to us was dumbfounded. He didn't know what to do. He had never leased one before, didn't know how to do it, and it took me 6 weeks of negotiations before I was able to get the car from their hands.
There's nothing like driving a car where you realize as you're sitting in traffic, there's no pollution coming out of your tailpipe. You're just sitting there with batteries on.
By driving an electric car, what are you sparing us from?
I'm saving America, Dave. That's what I'm doing. I am saving America by driving an electric car. God bless you.
Not everyone was sure that electric cars would save America. Even as GM rolled out its first batch of EV1s, there were skeptics.
Consumer acceptance and understanding has been